Okay, so welcome back to Kaspar. Kaspar and Johnny Trott are both on board the Titanic, and it's just hit an iceberg, and I don't think it's going to be good. So let's find out what happens. I never saw the iceberg, nor did any of us stokers, but we soon met one of the crew who was there when the ship struck and who had seen it all. He said the iceberg was at least 100 feet high, looming above the ship, and not white like icebergs are supposed to be, but dark, almost black. But it had been a glancing blow, he said, so no cause for alarm, no need for panic. And no one was panicking. No one was rushing anywhere. By now, more and more passengers were beginning to appear on deck to find out what was happening, just as we had. I saw a couple strolling by arm in arm. They looked completely unconcerned, as if they were simply taking the air. Even after the collision, like everyone on board, they still clearly accepted, as I did, the absolute assumption, and the one that had been confirmed to me in person by the captain, that the Titanic was unsinkable, and so everything would be fine. It was when the ship began to list, and this happened quite soon, that the first doubts began to creep in. But only when I saw men and women gathering in numbers on deck and putting on their life preservers did I truly begin to understand the dreadful danger we were now in, and only then did I think of Elizabeth and Kaspar in their stateroom on deck C. It took me a while to locate the right corridor, and when I did I had some difficulty in finding my way to number 52. There was no time to stand on ceremony. I hammered on the door, yelling for them. A moment or two later, Mr. Stanton was standing there in front of me, his face grey with anxiety. He was fully dressed, his life preserver already on, as were the rest of the family. They looked at me as if I'd come from another planet. Don't forget, they didn't know he was on there. I just blurted it out. I stowed away. That was all I said, by way of explanation. There wasn't time for any more, and now it didn't matter anyway. Are we sinking? Mr. Stanton asked me, quite calm and controlled. I don't know, I said. I don't think so, but I think we should get out on deck. Mrs. Stanton was picking up her bag. We must take nothing with us, my dear. Mr. Stanton spoke to her very gently but firmly. But all my precious things, my mother's necklace, my photographs, she said. You and Elizabeth are all that's precious, he said quietly. He turned to me. Johnny, you will take care of Elizabeth. Elizabeth's hand had crept into mine. It was cold. She looked up at me, her eyes full of bewilderment. She seemed only half awake, and it was only as we were leaving the cabin that she seemed to comprehend what was going on. She grasped her father's arm suddenly. Papa, what about Kaspar? We can't leave Kaspar. We leave everything behind, Elizabeth, and I mean everything. Mr. Stanton spoke very firmly to her. Oh, my goodness, you can't leave Kaspar on the ship, Mr. Stanton. What's he doing? Now follow me and stay close. God, they are leaving Kaspar behind. Staying close was not easy, because the corridors and gangways were full of people, and many of them were carrying or dragging heavy bags. Elizabeth kept saying it again and again to me now. What about Kaspar? We can't leave him, Johnny. We can't, please. All those people, they've got bags, they're carrying things, please. She was trying to tug me back all the time, but I knew there was nothing I could say to comfort her. I had to ignore her and keep going. As we got up onto the boat deck and out into the cold air, I realised the ship was listing more noticeably than before. I saw dozens of postbags being piled up on deck and abandoned luggage everywhere. Boats were being lowered away, and the band was playing. Everywhere people were gathered in small groups, huddled together against the cold, some with blankets around their shoulders. A few were praying out loud, but most stood in silence, waiting patiently. I recognised Mr. Lightler, the officer we'd seen in the captain's cabin going about the deck, organising and spreading calm as he went, and explaining to everyone that it would be women and children first, and then when all the women and children were safely away in the lifeboats, then the men could leave. When he turned to Mrs. Stanton and told her it was her turn to get into one of the boats, she clung to her husband and refused. "I won't leave my family," she said. "We belong together, and if it's God's will, then we die together." Gosh, this book is getting really sad. Mr. Stanton took her by the shoulders gently, and looking deep into her eyes, he spoke to her very softly, almost in a whisper. "You will take Elizabeth, my dear, and you will do as the officer says. Get into the boat. Johnny Trot and I will come after you, I promise. Go, my dear, go now." Sorry, got a picture. You see, there's the band playing. People often talk about the band continue to play when they talk about the Titanic. At that moment, Elizabeth broke free of my hand and ran for it. I knew straight away that she was going back for Kaspar. I went after her at once and caught her at the top of the gangway. She struggled against me, but I held her tight. "I can't leave him," she cried. "I can't, I won't." "Elizabeth," I said, "listen to me. I must take you to the boat. It will be gone soon. You have to go with your mother. You have to save yourself. Leave Kaspar to me. I will find him. I will save him." She looked up at me, her eyes full of sudden hope. "You promise me?" "I promise," I told her. "And you, Johnny, what will happen to you?" "I'll be all right. There's plenty of boats," I said. When we got back to the railings, hold on. Ziggy's come for another visit. Hey, Ziggy, just let me finish my story. When we got back to the railings, the lifeboat was nearly full and almost ready to launch, but I could see the crew were having the greatest difficulty in lowering it. With the help of Mr. Stanton and a sailor, we helped Elizabeth and her mother into the boat. Let me show them the picture, Ziggy. Ziggy, I want to show them a picture. Move. There you go. Get your butt out of the camera. There's a lifeboat. But the boat still could not be lowered. One of the crew was slicing away at the rope with a knife, cursing as he did so, and cursing even louder when he dropped the knife into the sea below. There were several lifeboats. Hold on. Excuse me. Sandy's come as well now. Hi, Sandy. Let me just finish my story. Okay, I'm going to go and feed the cats, and we'll finish this next time. Okay, so Elizabeth and her mum are in the lifeboat, and they're just trying to lower it. That's where we got to. All right, Kaspar.